Hello, you are listening to Jump and Shoot, a gaming podcast. And we're doing a bit of a late stream today. This is another episode in our Sidequests series, which are a series of discussion based live stream podcasts that are a little bit off the cuff, a little bit less structured, just a good time to hang out with your buds and chat about some games. And today I am joined by TheShadowHatter.
Hello!
He is a content creator and a good dude. And we are going to be talking about a game he did a video on many moons ago about Romancing SaGa Minstrel Song. Right?
Yes, beautiful Minstrel Song. Beautiful memories back in the day. My first video. I'll never forget.
That was your first video ever?
My first ever video.
All right.
Yeah, luckily the new videos sound better, but that one was a little hurdle to get through.
So did you ever do like a Let's Play of it or just a kind of review?
No, yeah, just a little reviewish. Although I wouldn't really call them reviews myself, I just kind of think of them as a spotlight series because I never really have any scores or anything like that. I just kind of like to gush about the game.
Nice. So on that front, you want to tell us a little bit about what your channel is or like what kind of stuff that you make?
Sure. It's been a while, man. I haven't uploaded in forever. But the whole point of that channel was for the Under Radar series, which is where the first episode of the Romancing SaGa Minstrel Song, spotlighting all these hidden gems, underrated games that I never see anybody talk about. And of course, nowadays you're not going to talk about these old retro ones. So it's nice to reintroduce them back into the wild. Then there was times where I would dabble into Let's Plays, random videos like anime music videos, and then some voice acting too, trying to be a voice actor. So I did a few things like that. But if I ever go back, it might just be Under Radar and maybe try to go into the voice acting again. Yeah.
Cool. Would you ever do another Saga game? Would you ever do like a fan dub or anything like that for another Saga game?
Oh my god, yes! If I could, I wish. It would be fun. I guess I just have to find the opportunity, and if the stars align, I would be down for that. Right? If anybody wanted me to dub anything like that, and especially for a Saga series, which I need to get back into. I need to.
You got to do it, man. I was telling ShadowHatter this before we started, but I think anyone who's been following me on Twitter or has been keeping up with my content, I'm definitely on like a Saga binge right now. I'm like full addict. And just if you guys aren't familiar with what I've been doing about this lately, I've just kind of been going through the series and just playing the games not sequentially or in release order, just kind of willy-nilly. So I replayed through the Final Fantasy Legend games, the first 3 games in the series, and then I did Romancing SaGa 3 and Scarlet Grace, and I am right at the end of Romancing SaGa 2. I just have the final boss left, and I'm ready to. I killed the super boss, so I'm ready to smoke him. And one of my biggest blind spots in the series is Romancing SaGa, and Romancing SaGa 1, and which was remade as Minstrel Song, correct?
Yes.
So obviously the Super Famicom version is far superior to the PlayStation 2 one, right?
Oh my god. Can you fight, sir?
Yes, but I will not fight you on this. I probably will agree. Shout out to my friend Steve on Twitter, Mr. Alarm, who has been playing Romancing SaGa 1 actually on Super Famicom. And he just started, I think, yesterday, and it piqued my interest. It's been something I've been thinking about checking out. But so this episode is going to be you selling, not just me, but the listeners on Minstrel Song.
Oh boy, what a tall order to fill. I will try my best.
I have to say, though, I will spoil something about what I think this episode will be. And it's, I saw your video that you did, and it was fantastic, and that's why I reached out to you. And I don't think you'll have a hard time convincing me, but just in case.
I might, because there are good and there's bad. but
Okay.
I would say a lot more good into it.
Cool. So before we get into the good and bad of that, which there's always a wonderful dichotomy of that in Saga, let's talk a little bit about the series as a whole with you. So, from what I understand, you're not a huge fan of the series entirely, right?
Nah, yeah, it's a series that I've wanted to get into, but the barrier for entry is a little much for me because it has a nice story. For the most part, the story's good, and art style is always beautiful. Music's fantastic. The problem is the gameplay is not for everybody, and
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be an instance where, for example, with Minstrel Song, if you want to have an enjoyable experience, in my opinion, you're going to need a walkthrough
Yes.
because you are going to miss things, and there might be a point where you get stuck and you have no way to figure out how to get to the next portion of it, and it's a little frustrating. But once you get past that point, then it starts becoming a little bit easier. So it's
Mm-hmm.
one of those things where after Minstrel Song, and I love Minstrel Song to death, I had no interest in jumping into another Saga game for a while because it's like it feels like homework sometimes.
It
And
does.
while and while it's fun when you're getting it, when you don't get it and you're stuck in that rut, it's not fun. You don't want to keep going. So it's one of those things where it really depends. If you're okay with going with a walkthrough, I think you'll have an enjoyable time. But if you don't have a walkthrough, just be prepared for your trial and error. Just know what you're getting yourself into.
Man, you have touched on what I think is one of the most interesting subjects about this series in general is that very disparate kind of idea of how to approach these kind of games because like I agree with you. I think I have the most fun with Saga games when I go in prepared and I to turn your phrase, you do my homework. My only thing
Yeah,
is like when I don't really find it unfun when I don't understand it. I think that learning experience is what is so addicting to me about this series. And although yeah, that can be really really frustrating. Because again, obviously I don't really know anything about Minstrel Song really. I just know that you have separate protagonists and it's similar to
yeah,
Saga Frontier and Romancing Saga 3 and how you approach the scenarios and whatever, but I don't really know the mechanics of it. But I assume it's pretty similar to the other ones. And there's a lot of things in Romancing Saga 2 or Scarlet Grace that are really frustrating that just aren't explained to you well or whatever. And
there you go.
yeah, and it's like I'm fine with mechanics being deep and like there being a lot to them and it not being easy or accessible, but I think it's just how you present that information. So I'm going to give you an example of something in Romancing Saga 2 and tell me if this is true for Minstrel Song. So enemies in that game hit you hard as hell. Like you will get one shot, two shot by most enemies, even with max HP. And
Yeah.
so enemies scale to you as well in Romancing Saga 2, and I assume they do in Minstrel Song.
Yes, they do. They scale with you, and it's to a point where you are punished for grinding.
Yeah.
You can't do not grind in Mistlethon. You're gonna have a bad time. Yeah,
So that is a deep subject too, and we'll come back to that because that's a huge component of these games too. But so okay, so the enemies hit hard as hell, and obviously, what's your first reaction to something like that? Upgrade your armor. Look at this. So if you equip an armor piece, the value that appears on the screen in Romancing Saga 2, and I'm speaking from the remaster point of view,
yeah.
it'll be like 26. So it's like, okay, I have this piece of armor that's 26 defense, and then I have another piece that's 52. I'm gonna go with the 52. That's the big number, right? And you would think that, but it's the value on the screen is one type of defense, and it's not like an average number of all the defense types or whatever. It's just a slashing defense, so that's not going to be
Yep.
helpful for like 7 out of 8 different types of enemies. And one sec, my dog is licking her paw. Cleo, stop. Uh, sorry. Uh,
Like,
and yeah, so I mean, there's like kind of other indicators where there's like very obtuse things that's like defense and it's like an icon, but as a whole, you don't know what things do. So I don't like you said, there's that barrier for entry,
yeah,
and that doesn't really make things harder to me or more difficult. It just makes things obtuse and frustrating.
exactly. Now you gotta go and do a little bit more research before you go back into the fight.
Right. And I'm
Yeah,
sitting here with like 4 or 5 Google Sheets that I cross reference, you know? And and a big part of it too is that a lot of the information about these games is like it's there, it's on the internet, right? But is it super easily accessible? And I don't know. And
not only that, but imagine a time when the internet was still brand new.
mhm.
You know?
So wait, did you play Minstrel Song when it first came out?
No, 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 no. I found it. I don't even remember how I found it. I think it was like in a bargain bin in GameStop or something one time. It just like blew my mind after that, but I can't even remember.
So it wasn't like when did it come out? 2003 or something. Uh, so it wasn't that far back. But so like when you played it, was there like the internet was obviously more prevalent, and it was
Yeah, yeah.
prevalent
So
during that time, but not as much.
yeah, I just jumped on GameFAQs after I got stuck and just rode my way to victory after that.
So I hear a lot
Yeah.
of people say that Minstrel Song is one of the hardest games in the series,
Is
and
it? Because if it really is, and then I don't think a lot of people are gonna have a lot of problems with the other Saga games. And uh, but to be fair, I did follow a walkthrough, so maybe the
right,
walkthrough set me up fine with that, to get all this extra gear that I needed. But I mean, I guess it would be difficult if you don't know what you're doing because the problem with that game is that the life points.
yeah,
It's like sometimes something can hit you hard enough that it takes out a life point without knocking you out completely, and now you're more stressed out because
yeah.
you have this character that has 5 life points. They took out one, you have 4 left. That means they get 4 more hits of this same thing, and they're out for good. They're gone, and it's like you got to find somebody else to replace them and build them up and all this other stuff. So
Can you recover
yeah.
LP in any way in this game?
Oh boy, I want to say yes. I feel like there is a point where I feel like you can
Okay,
because I feel like you can.
so this is
I hope
why
I'm right.
uh, you're gonna sell me in this game. I'm gonna sell you on Romancing Saga 3. Okay, uh, Romancing Saga 3 has LP as well, and it's the same kind of. It's always that gameplay loop of like you get stressed as hell when like when one of your characters gets knocked down, and then stuff keeps hitting it and like draining the
Yeah.
life points, and you're like, please don't let Daddy die. I don't want Daddy to die. But with Romancing Saga 3, it's very easy to recover those life points. You just go to an inn and boom, bang, now you're back.
Okay. And I think that is how it is in Minstrel Song, which is good because that is another problem. If your character is knocked out, and I think they can still get hit with AOE even at 0 HP
Yeah,
and lose life points
mm-hmm.
again. So
Like that
yeah,
in the other ones.
so definitely frustrating experience when you get one knocked out, and especially it's one you don't want to lose because now AOE's are hitting it. They have no more time left.
And he's just dying and getting spit roasted.
Exactly. Stop. He's already dead.
Just literally kicking the horse when he's down. See, Romancing Saga 2 is very stressful with that because there are LP potions in it, but it's not really something you can practically farm until endgame, and even then, it's not really a practical thing. So it's very easy to lose your folks in that game compared to every other Saga game that I've played. And Scarlet Grace has this as well, but when you lose LP and the character's dead, it just out of battles for X number of battles. And there's ways to like recover it, but it's not as easily accessible as ins in RS3, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm really curious to see how this plays out in Minstrel Song because, yeah, the whole concept of LP is crazy. So if somebody dies and they reach 0 LP, are they gone from the game forever?
That I wish I knew the answer to that one. And I would say yes. I feel like there's something where they tell you about that, but I never experienced that myself with the
Mm.
walkthrough. So, but I want to say yes, especially when it comes to mercenary characters, because
Okay,
not only
yeah.
do you have the random eight, I believe it's eight characters that you can choose from
Mhm.
to start with and have them join your party, but there are random people you can find at the pub that are like pretty much a default class or something. Here's a class.
I
You want them
see.
to join you? Yes. And then when they get 0 life points, I'm imagining they're out for good and they're not coming back. As
Oh,
for important characters, I don't know, but I would say so.
okay. Is it possible to bonk your save in this game? Like, can you hit a point where you just cannot progress and you're screwed and you have to start over?
That yes, and that's the
Ooh.
part that I was saying about the do not
Grind.
grind in this game. I don't know if it's spoilers to talk about it, so I guess I'll try to avoid it for
Oh
now.
no, no,
But
no,
yeah,
no.
there is.
You can as like
Oh yeah.
no. If it's not a plot spoiler, it's fine. If
Okay,
it's
cool.
like if it's like
Yeah. So
if it's like there's a point of no return or something or like whatever, I don't care.
all
I'm
right, cool.
free.
So when you grind the game, there is this creature called the Jewel Beast,
Mhm.
which is a boss in Romancing SaGa, and I guess it's lying dormant in sleep. But as you're killing monsters, you're kind of progressing time. I forget what this feature is called, but yeah, pretty much when you're grinding in the game, that's when the game starts progressing time wise, and certain quests will start
Oh, okay.
disappearing, and you can't do these quests anymore now because it's treating you killing monsters as actually passing real life time. So
I
this jewel
see.
beast is yeah, this jewel beast is lying dormant, and he has I think like 40% of the entire map destroyed if you let him awaken and do his rampage. And then he plops his butt down on this one town, and you cannot go to that area of the map ever again until you kill this monster. And it's a really hard fight. So I don't know, but I don't know
Ooh.
if it's like oh you're screwed, you got to start up the game all over again. But I know it's you basically locked yourself out of a whole crap ton of content that you're never going to be able to experience. And not only that, but now even if you even want to get to any content, if there is any like beyond this monster, now you got to defeat this really hard boss, and that you're most likely not even prepared for because you've just been grinding probably some low level area for like an hour or two, and now you figured out, oh crap, it's over.
Rip. Yeah, that's wild. Okay,
Yeah.
so that sounds a lot like systems in RS2 and systems in RS3. So in RS2, when you there's like a event points, and every time you complete a side quest, you rack up these points. And if you rack up a certain number of points, then you go to a new generation and you have a whole new cast of characters.
Oh
And
boy.
that doesn't really necessarily lock you out of quests. There's a couple quests that it can, but it sounds like a little bit more of a nuanced system, or not nuanced, but it sounds like a more forgiving system than what you're
Yeah.
describing Minstrel Song as.
Yeah.
And Romancing Saga 3 is similar because it also has like, you know, if you do a quest out of order or you can mess up a quest very easily in that game for sure and then
Yep.
get screwed out
Exactly.
of, but it's like it's not that big in that game because the scaling isn't as punishing. So, to give you perspective too about like the development of these games, it's like it's kind of funny because, you know, obviously Romancing Saga 1, the non remake of Minstrel Song came out, and then they kind of like tried to reestablish that system for Romancing Saga 3, and then they tried to further it and deepen it more in RS3. I think I just said that twice, but they kept trying to refine the systems, and then they went back to the first game and did their do over. They played their do over card, right?
Yeah.
So, one of the interesting things I think about like this almost like revisionist history that Square Enix has done with this series is they do add this like modicum of accessibility every time that they go back to a game in any way. And so the remasters of Romancing Saga 2 and 3, they added this feature. It's a new game plus feature. So at any time during the game, it's not you don't have to beat the game. You can start a new file with any save file that you have, and you retain like it changes based on the games. And Saga
Yeah.
Scarlet Grace has this kind of too, but it's more linear. You can only do it once you beat the game, but you can like retain like the text that you've learned, and I think some two of them have MP that you can transfer over, and like there's things that you could transfer over. So like if you get stuck, you can just like start a new game and not have to grind as much.
There you go.
So that's I'm assuming that Minstrel Song doesn't have that because this game came out like 17 years ago.
Yeah, it does not, and I would have loved that.
Mm-hmm. So that brings us to another topic. Why didn't we get a port of this first? Why did we get Romancing SaGa 2 first?
That's a good question, and I wish I had an answer for that. It's so weird. It seems like they don't really know what to do with this series, and I feel like they understand that there's not a big fan base behind this series just because it does so much different that a lot of people are like, well, why don't I just go to Final Fantasy? I mean, Saga first started out being called Final Fantasy in a way, so it's kind of like people probably just kind of they see that and they're like, well, Final Fantasy is easier, and I can I understand these things. I don't have to do research to play this game, so it's kind of I'm very surprised that Scarlet Grace actually even came out because I didn't even think that there was an audience for Saga games anymore, which is why I even started that video in the first place, because I was like, I really want another Saga game that looks like this and plays like this because it's really cool, but I didn't ever think it would ever come out. Then Scarlet Grace comes out and surprises me, so it's so confusing. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's gonna be another Saga game after Scarlet Grace. I hope so, but I really don't know.
So I think you may be a little too cynical on this because it's like you've got the Saga Frontier remaster that's coming out this summer, and the games had to sell at least decently well to bring over two games that were never localized here in the U.S. RS2 and RS3. But yeah, you are 100% right about the fan base and the audience just being a lot fewer and far between than Final Fantasy, because I've always Final Fantasy's. I think I say this statement every podcast that I've done, but Final Fantasy has always struggled with its accessibility. It's both its blessing and its curse, right? And it always tries to be something different and whatever. But Saga is always Saga. I mean, yeah, it's different. It has different variations for sure, and they all feel different. But I'm just going to use the word different 7 times in a sentence. But but they still have a more core philosophy, I think, than most Final Fantasies do. And I find it funny that they don't do super well here, because Saga is, in essence, more of a Western influenced game, at least in terms of mechanics, because Saga takes a lot of stuff from tabletop RPGs, D&D, like all the nerdy 80s shit, right? And it sucks that like people didn't catch on to that as much. And I mean, okay, obviously Unlimited Saga hurt a little bit, right? Because like if that game had been Scarlet Grace, because I think to me Scarlet Grace is what Unlimited Saga should have been. It's similar approach, the world map and how you move around, and the D&D elements are a lot more accessible and less like frustratingly random or seemingly random. And but like it is kind of funny that doesn't really pick up. And I think I'm really glad that we got Romancing SaGa 2 and 3 here for sure, because we just never got them in the US. And but at the same time, it's like, are they going to give us Minstrel Song? Because they're really pushing these remakes, and it seems like they're going to keep it up. It seems like they're going to keep pace. Because like once RS3 came out, the Saga Frontier, or once RS3 came out, Scarlet Grace came out not long after. Or maybe I have that backwards, I think. But either way, those two games came out in the US. In really close proximity. And then the Frontier remaster was announced like a couple months ago. And so I think that's going to do pretty well, hopefully.
And I'll give you that, because I wasn't even aware about the Saga Frontier one. And then I forgot, too, that they did do a mobile game for it too. So there's a
Oh yeah,
Romancing SaGa mobile game,
yeah,
and
Reuniverse.
and that caught me by surprise too because I was not expecting that. So I'll give you that. Where it's not as bad as I'm making it sound.
Yeah, I think
It
it just like you love the series too, and like you want it to do well, and it just seems hopeless at times, right?
yeah, yeah.
And that's how
Especially
I
with
feel.
Minstrel Song. Yeah, especially what like it. I don't know. I think the best part about Minstrel Song has to be just the art style for it, and I've never seen anything like it. And as soon as I finished playing that, I was like, wow, I really wish that 2 and 3 would just be remade and look exactly the same. That's it.
Hmm.
Just make that jump to 3D. Give me that 3D goodness that Minstrel Song had. I don't know. I'm weird with art styles. Like my favorite Mega Man game is Legend. That low poly art style is the best. I don't think there's any other Mega Man game that I love more than
I'm so more than which one? Which Mega Man game?
Legends.
Oh, Legends. Oh yeah, hell yeah. I love
Yep.
Volnut. I love Volnut's style. Funny enough, this podcast started as a Mega Man podcast. So
Oh yeah, jump and shoot, man.
yeah, hell yeah. So if anytime you want to talk Mega Man, always down. But yeah, so we'll have a little back and forth here because personally, I think Saga games have this trend with me where the concept art is beautiful and the backgrounds are great and there's a lot of depth and like color and just a lot of interesting things that are done aesthetically. But I gotta say, the Minstrel Song art style, like I can't really get into it, and I haven't played it yet. I haven't played it yet, so I can't tell you that for sure.
How dare you? You
but
invite me to your home, your loving dogs, your girlfriend, and you insult me at the front door. And you expect me to walk in and have a conversation with you about this game. Oh my god. Can I curse in this podcast?
yes, you can. You can fucking curse.
Okay, I won't do it though. I'll be nice. But you hurt my feelings there. You hurt my feelings.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The Shadow Hatter is now the Shadow Godfather. So
That's right.
yeah, so that's no, I mean like okay, so I don't completely hate it. I like it more than the DS remakes of the DS, yeah, the DS remakes of Legend 1 and 2 or Legend 2 and 3, sorry. It looks a lot less chibi than that, but I just something about like the muted colors and in like the chibi-esque models doesn't
That's what it was gonna be.
doesn't do it, you know.
I think that's my appeal with it. Some people like it, some people don't. I like it. It's not too childlike, but it is weird. And especially their faces, they look kind of like frogs in a weird way when you look at. Yeah, so I'll admit that they don't look the best, but there are some. I would say if you ignore the characters and you go for boss designs and monster designs, I think you'll like those a little bit better. Like character designs, I'll give you that. They look weird and some of them are downright ugly, but
Mhm.
I would say everything else looks good. And the colors, for me, it fits because it's almost like a moving painting. It's like a
Okay.
moving painting, and then you get some of the cutscenes in the game almost come out like comic book manga.
Okay.
It's a weird combination, but it looks good to me. It fits, and I can get the criticism on the color, but I think it fits when you really think of it as this kind of moving painting.
Okay. Uh, I'm becoming more amenable to this, and as the veil on my chair falls over,
Yes,
um,
yes.
we're pulling down the curtain. Okay, so just to compare, I sorry to keep jumping back for other games, but I'm trying to use them as a comparison. So Scarlet
You good, you
Grace
good.
is, to me, it's like I don't really like the art style of that game either. A lot of the time, I go through something about the characters, and this isn't all characters, not all the time, but something about them looks kind of stout and stumpy. And as somebody who is stout himself, I take offense. No, but like it sometimes looks a little funky. So I think, and this is my opinion. I think Saga could really help to go back to I feel like they could use, if they were trying to be more accessible to a Western audience, it would help if they stuck to designs that are more similar to the concept art. So I think Saga Frontier was a perfect middle ground of this. Saga Frontier, I think it looks amazing because it still has that chibi-esque style, the early PS1 style, right?
Yeah.
But it has a very unique, varied color palette. It's very vibrant, and I mean, it still has this like unique charm to it. But you know, if you look at the character designs for Saga Frontier, the character art, it's so good. I just like I want to see that. I want to see that like watercolor illustration more in the characters, if that makes sense.
No, I definitely agree with that, and I think that's what initially drew me to Minstrel Song in the beginning, was this, because it was a weird transition for that. I think, damn, I'm trying to think of what game series it is. I just had it in the tip of my tongue and I lost it. But there is a game that feels like a good example of that. Okay, now I remember. It was a mobile game where it was like a. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Final Fantasy Brave Exvius.
Oh, Exvia, yeah, okay.
But it's the Final Fantasy Tactics one.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I haven't played that one.
And you know, it's like I played it for a little bit, but the main draw was that you actually get the Final Fantasy Tactics concept art, and they actually make it 3D. So you actually get that art style that you want, the art style that they have there, and they actually turn it into a 3D model. Which, if they can do that with that, I think Saga Frontier would have been another one that could work. I feel like.
So, Reuniverse Saga, Reuniverse, the mobile game that we were talking about earlier, that does the Final Fantasy record keeper thing of taking characters that were in 3D or 3D games and making them into 16-bit sprites. Like, you know, there's Gray from Minstrel Song and a couple things, and I think that I love that so much. You know, I love that
remake style.
The remake style, it's so good.
I love it.
And the characters from Unlimited Saga are in there too. Which one? I have nothing bad to say about the battle sprites in Unlimited Saga, but it's probably the only good thing I'll say about it.
It is weird though, and I can agree with that. When you get these kind of like, you see something so advanced that you kind of want to see what it would look like if you actually went back in time and you made that game in that art style. So it's kind of like I assume Record Keeper. I assume they have Final Fantasy 15 characters by now.
Yeah,
you know, so it's very interesting to see. Wow, this game, how it looks almost realistic in a way. Now you're just dialing it back centuries in a way to just bare minimum pixel style, and it's like you went from that to that. Like, it looks incredible.
I think the best example of that is Lightning. I really love Lightning from FF13's remake style. I think she looks awesome as a sprite. And I just love sprites, man. I'm like an ancient old man, so I have to, right? That has to be the thing I
agree. And for me, funnily enough, it's sprites, but I also like weird art style. So it's like I like sprites, but I love Pokemon Red and Blue sprites compared to all the other sprites. Like Pokemon Red and Blue had like the weirdest looking sprites, but they had the most character in them, the most energy to them. Where now it's like, you know, Black and White were the last ones, and they were kind of like regular and a little bit boring. I mean, I won't trash talk Black and White because at least they made theirs animated and expressive. But other than that, it's just like, I don't know, they just look so plain.
Yes, it's the digital look because they stopped using like the Sugimori like watercolor style, and like Pokemon back then looked a lot more like a bug-like because they had those specific eyes. And there was like, it felt like there was like a design document for how Pokemon were supposed to be designed. And then around Gen 4 and 5, that's when it started to become more like clean and like digital looking.
Yeah.
So I totally feel you. I love all Pokemon, but I will say that all Pokemon are not created equal.
No, I can agree with that 100%.
That's like the libertarians Pokemon take or something. I don't know.
You know, it's like, I don't want to hate them, but man, one that looks like an ice cream. Come on.
Okay, I love Vanillux. it's so stupid. It is so dumb, but I love it.
I don't hate him. I don't hate him. I just question why he exists.
Oh yeah, okay, that's yeah, same here. I
You
often
know?
wonder that. Um, so circling back to visuals in Minstrel Song though, uh, when you're around the world and you're walking around the world in this game, how noticeable is that art style? Do you find that it's easy to immerse yourself in it? Are objects clear? Is it easy to move around and sort of see what's going on?
Uh, I would say if it wasn't, it's a yes and no because as nice as it is, it all blends together too well. And
Mm-hmm.
if it wasn't for these like UI, like a random floating 3D arrow to show me where to go, it's like I might I might try to walk into this building. Next thing you know, my character is stuck running into a wall. So
Yeah.
there's things like that where it's like you'll see some, kind of like how most games are. You can't enter every single building that you see,
Right.
but you'll know the ones that you can get into and the ones you can't. But
Okay.
yeah, no, I mean, when you walk in there, at least for me, I get sucked into it, and I enjoy my time there. I'm looking at the visuals, I'm loving everything I see, and after a while, you'll figure out where you need to go and what you got to do. It's not it, you know, I don't know.
No, that's
It
that's
looks
cool.
good. It looks good. It looks good, and I don't think people have trouble really like navigating themselves into the world itself. But I will say you might get lost into it if you like the art style as much as I do.
Okay. Yeah, I think the reason why I bring that up too is like I'm trying to compare and contrast elements from the Saga games that I'm more familiar with. And Saga Frontier 1 has that big problem where it's kind of difficult to see where you can go, like what you can go in, what you can't, what's an object, what's not. And FF7 for PS1 also had this issue, but they tried to make that accessible by like adding that like cursor feature where like little fingers.
Exactly what I'm talking about.
Mm,
Exactly that. And the
so
same thing too. I had that problem with the first Saga game where I tried to play the PlayStation One and I could not understand where I was going, and I stopped
yeah.
playing. And I
Hmm.
still haven't gone back to it yet because I'm scared to get lost again.
You know what? I wonder if that's gonna be something that gets addressed in the remake because all it needs is just a pointing system or something.
Yeah,
But the remaster I think should help with that because the sprites are clearer. Uh,
yeah.
funny anecdote, and I think I mentioned this last episode. But when I played Saga Frontier, I played it I played it 20 years ago, 21 years ago, or however
Oh
long it
boy.
was. And I played it like on an 80-inch projection TV that had like the bulbs kind of burnt out. So it was like impossible to see that game, dude. And Saga Frontier 2 was worse because it had that like watercolor vibrant style, which is
Yeah.
beautiful, but does not look good on a TV that shitty. So it was like I remember struggling with that really bad. I watched a speed run of Saga. I watch a lot of speed runs of Saga Frontier, and even then I'm like, oh, I don't know how you know that that's the door.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a struggle. That's definitely a struggle. Um,
Yeah.
okay, let's move from visuals to mechanics a little bit. So there's 8 different protagonists in this game, right?
Yeah.
Have you played through all the stories?
No, I only stuck with Gray, and after Gray, I wanted to jump into the other ones, but again, I was like, I need a 5 year break from this game before I ever jump back. Yeah, before I ever jump back into it, man. And I wanted to though, because there's a few characters that I do enjoy. Because and I'm sure all the other Saga games are like this. You pick one, but the other ones are going to show up anyway. You can
Yeah.
have them in your party too. It's just you just kind of decide who you want to control and whose story you really want to get invested to, first.
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah,
like,
Gray
start
looked
with
the
Gray
most
and
interesting to me. His is
yeah.
really open ended, isn't it? Isn't his scenario like one of the more free ones?
Um, I suppose because it's more like he's an adventurer, and I think at the end of the day, the only quest that he really has that's like specific to his story is a katana that he finds, and that has like I think it houses a demon spirit inside of it. But other than
Okay,
that, almost everything else is kind of like you can kind of just do whatever with them.
cool. Yeah, I've always I really love. the non-linearity of Saga games. And I mean, a lot of the times they will put you on a path where you have to do things in a certain order or whatever. But that pacing of linear, like small linear segments contrasted with mostly non-linear ones, is
Yeah,
one of the things I love the most about this game. And I hear that Minstrel Song is very nice about that. Like, there's just a lot of stuff that you can do, which could be overwhelming, but
yeah,
it depends on what you
and
like.
yeah, and that's where I go back to that original point of the event. I wish I remember what it was called, but yeah, the you don't want to grind too much. You know, if you're doing quests, then you really have to try and avoid monsters, just so you can get the most out of it. So you can get the most out of all these quests, because there are going to be points where, as fun as it is that you're open and you can kind of do whatever, there are points where you're gonna lose out on certain things if you're not too careful. Case in
Mm-hmm.
point, the jewel beast. You know, you let that jewel beast awaken and rampage all over the town, you lose a big segment of the map, and now your freedom's not as free as it used to be until you take that thing down. Which, by the time it gets up there, I don't know. You know, I don't know if there's ever been someone who's just defeated it outright when it's awoken. Usually people go to it when it's dormant and sleeping and it's weak. You can take care of it that way. But I don't know if anyone's ever just defeated it after like messing up. Like, oh crap, it's already awoken. It's shit in the bed right here in this town. I don't know what to do.
uh, Maybe the serpent is like a meta commentary for people's frustration for playing the game, right? Like, like
That
it's
or like a message about procrastination, I guess
there.
too.
You go. Exactly. Do not sleep on this. And
Yep.
yeah,
Do not push it off until later. I learned that the hard way.
man, that's a lesson for all of us, especially our generation. Man, we were so bad about that. Again, like I'm not libertarian, but I make these vaguely libertarian comments all the time, apparently. But anyway,
Don't
uh,
worry, man. Forward it to a video game advisor on Twitter.
there you go.
That's a good one for the books.
There you go. uh, yeah, no, that's interesting. So scaling is something that you see in all Saga games, and it works differently in each game that I've played in the series thus far, except the first three, which are more like they don't really have scaling. This, like, like enemies are set. There's pacing,
Yeah.
but there's no scaling. Um, Romancing Saga 2 will scale enemies depending on how many battles that you fought. And Romancing Saga 3 is a little bit more interesting because what it does is that there's scaling, but it's like based off of how many times you've fought and killed mobs of a certain type. So if I sit on a map and I kill, I don't know, 400 gargoyle mobs, I'm going to get the highest tier gargoyle enemy when I fight that mob on the field.
Oh, interesting.
And I think it also takes a bit of your HP into account too. It definitely does.
Mm.
And most bosses are set. Some bosses are not, but most bosses are set and just have preset stats. And Saga Scarlet Grace scales pretty much everything up to you. There's a couple bosses that are not that are preset. Like I think the true final boss and some of the final boss stuff is preset. But as a whole, that game is Scarlet Grace is constantly scaling with you and always seemingly one step ahead of you.
Yeah.
So I'm curious as to where Minstrel Song falls in here. And I know that's a really difficult question to answer without getting too granular with mechanics.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about it because you mentioned how defeating all these gargoyles gets you a strong one, and I could have swore for the life of me in Minstrel Song that it's kind of the opposite, where you defeat certain mobs and it's almost like you're thinning out the herd. You're not getting as many of that same mob as you
Hmm.
used to, because you're now like almost eradicating the whole race off the face of the planet.
Right.
But I could
Genocide.
be wrong on that. It could be the way that you're saying it, feeding them, and you end up with a stronger one later. But I could have swore when I used to play it, it used to be that I would see less of them. And I'm trying to think if the scaling was that they would introduce stronger mobs down the road too. But I don't know if it was specific to any mobs that you kill and they give you an upgraded version. The only thing that I remember about it mostly with scaling was the whole event story
Right.
where you're getting locked
Okay.
out of quests and certain things. But I feel like a lot of the mobs stay the same when you're
Oh, so that
doing
could be
that.
worse then, because then you're fighting mobs that aren't letting you spark techs or giving you HP ups or whatever
Yeah,
skill ups.
yeah, exactly. Where you're not getting as much like I guess the word would be what diminishing returns kind of in a
Right,
way.
exactly.
You're starting out good, and then if you keep grinding, you're not only not getting as much, now you're kind of screwing yourself over as time is progressing and all these quests that you're getting locked out of.
Always just waiting to bite you in the ass. Yeah, man, I've
Yeah,
noticed this prevailing sense. I mean, this is true across most Saga games, but from what you're describing in this, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it's like the anti procrastination, right?
yeah,
Like it's really pushing you to be more active, which maybe that's healthy for us. Maybe we all need to play Minstrel Song.
yeah. I mean, I guess a way to describe the Saga series, it's kind of like you don't get a break. You don't get
Mm-hmm.
to relax and do. You don't get to relax and grind and kill easy monsters to level up and get better at it eventually. Because if you do, you're gonna get punished for it. You kind of have to just know what you're doing and kind of keep progressing at the same time as you're
Mm-hmm.
learning. You're not allowed to just be lazy and stay in the low level zone and start ranking up points. You actually have to you're on a real adventure. You actually have to do
Right.
these things. They're not gonna wait for you. You have to kill this. You have to destroy Saruin. He's not gonna wait for you. None of these monsters are gonna wait for you. They're gonna keep getting more powerful the more you fight. So you need to actually go to them, and you gotta learn how to fight. You gotta. I guess minor grinding would be in order because you do have to still do the
Right.
whole skill learning,
You can't
which
avoid stuff
yeah,
completely.
exactly. You can't just put it off till later, and especially with that because you have that whole skill learning system where that's a random thing too. You don't even know if you're gonna get the skills that you want at the time that you need them. So it's kind of like always on your toes. But I guess a weird way to describe it is kind of like the Soul series where it's kind of like it's punishing you, but once you finally get it down, you're gonna get this sense of satisfaction and reward because you know that when you overcome it, it was you that did it. You had no help with it.
Right.
You did it all on your own.
Yeah, I always hate making the Souls comparison, but I think it's really applicable in Saga's case because it is kind of like that practical, pragmatic approach to difficulty and success. And there's like a catharsis in going to a place that you feel like you're not ready for, and then it slowly becomes apparent that like, oh, you're just doing something wrong. You just have to adjust just a little bit, just adapt. It's not really the game that's
Exactly.
unfair. It's just not giving you as much leeway as other games do.
Yeah, exactly.
One of my, and you mentioned like leveling up and like not completely ignoring things, but like just being a little bit more practical about it. And
Yeah,
games never really, our JRPGs very very rarely ever make the player sort of question or challenge when or not that they should be grinding. And I think one of the
exactly.
most interesting things about Saga games, and one of the things that like just dumps all my serotonin, is like finding the ample time to spark techs, right? Like being like, if I go to this high level zone, I won't be able to kill the mobs there, but maybe I can like spark a tech and then run away, and then I'll have a
Yeah,
higher level. And I think that kind of stuff, like that is that freedom, that like openness, like you're not exploiting the game, you're taking advantage of like and taking a risk because you're raising your battle rank or however that works in this game.
yeah,
That is like the this one of the strongest, most appealing things about Saga, and I'm wondering how prevalent that is in Minstrel Song with sparking techs and getting that
yeah.
gameplay
And
loop.
and thank you for reminding me. It is event rank system. That's the name of the whole
Okay,
system for the story and all that.
gotcha.
But yeah, no. The sparking text that is I would say it's not as frustrating as it was in I think Romancing Saga 3 when I tried that one. I tried Romancing Saga 3 and I could not for the life of me get any text to spark at
Yeah,
all while I'm advancing through the story. And it's so frustrating and I'm just like I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing wrong. But no, Minstrel Saga. I think they had an address for that, and it was you get them a little bit more often too, and couple that with positioning your party members among other things, and it makes it a little bit easier because I know positioning your party members, you also get into these weird like combos that you can make, and I wish I remember what that was called.
Oh,
You
so
had
like
those.
the formation system affects combos in there? I didn't realize
I
that there were combos in there. That's crazy.
I think I'm trying to think because I feel like I have sparked text while I was doing formations,
Hmm.
and then of course there's the formations where once you're done, you actually like end up with a weird summon out of it, which is very interesting
Oh,
to me.
huh. Yeah, that was. I don't think that was in the Super Famicom version, so that was probably, uh,
Something new.
yeah, something new with the remake. Huh. Speaking of which, just this is a spontaneous subject here. If there was a port of Minstrel Song, or if there was a, I guess if Romancing Saga 1 in all its elements were brought over to modern consoles, how opposed to a version of the first Super Famicom Romancing Saga would you be? Like a remaster of that rather than Minstrel Song.
Ooh, I would worry about it. If its goal is to get new people into the series, I would worry about it. I think Minstrel Song is more accessible than its original, and with it's more forgiving. I would say
Mm-hmm.
it's got more to it than the original, and it's one of those things where it's like once you play Minstrel Song, you'll want to play the original just to see what's so different and what's so alike. But I would not. Well, that's personally for me. I would not care for the original one being remastered or ported. I think the remake itself does a good job of getting someone into this series and also bringing in some mechanics that help with the punishing gameplay. I would say,
Interesting.
yeah,
Cool.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't hate it, but I wouldn't invest in it. I guess is a word
Yeah.
for
It's
it.
like it's funny because it seems like Minstrel Song is obviously the ideal version of the game, and also Romancing Saga 1 is notoriously unfinished. Every Saga game has a storied history of being unfinished in some capacity. But yeah, I think I heard the Super Famicom one is very broken. There's a lot of strange half-ass mechanics, little things like that, and I don't really hear that about Minstrel Song. I think that the biggest criticisms I've heard about Minstrel Song is that just the obtuseness of it, the accessibility, the barrier of
Yeah.
entry. So these are things that are implicit in the series rather than you know
Yeah, specific
me-
to this one game.
right. So it's like that's good. That's definitely good. So I think part of me would like the weird purist would like to see the three Romancing Saga games in their Super Famicom like remastered style, but at the same
Yeah.
time, I definitely it seems like this version is just the quintessential one.
Yeah,
So
I mean, if anything, I would accept it if they had it as a bundle. It's like one, two, and
yeah,
three all put together because at least you're not disappointed if you're not happy with the first one. Then you
right,
have the second and third one to fall back to. But I wouldn't want the first one to be the only thing you're given. It has to be bundled in with the rest. That's
totally.
the only way I would accept
And my light just went out. That's funny.
it.
I don't
Oh
know.
boy,
Oh boy,
I'm
that's
speaking. I'm speaking madness to the gods. They're not happy.
yeah. Damn, Kawazu himself is like, no, son, no,
Settlewing yeah, Settlewing
Sarween.
did
Yeah.
the sacrifice.
So Sarween, I've heard. So what I hear is that there's like fate stones or something in this game, correct?
Yes, yes, the
So do
Fate
you want
Stones.
to you want to explain this because I heard that they relate to the last boss, and I've got a good anecdote about this. Once the mechanic is explained, because I don't know what exactly it is.
And I'm trying to understand myself because I don't. I think you do actually do collect fate stones, but I don't know if it was something that I did myself.
Hmm. So it's
See if
like
I
an
could
optional
find that.
thing. It's not like
Actually,
critical
no,
path.
no. Actually, no, I'm a dummy. My bad. Because I do remember there are fate stones that you collect in the story,
Let it be like.
and it's all about this hero named who fights these uh gods, Sarwin, Shirak, and Death. Uh, Elor is, I think he's like the king of the gods or the father of the gods, and he distributes these fate stones to help Mirsa defeat these three gods. And I know that you do collect them because in the story, at least with Gray, there are these two characters that I like. These two, I'm trying to remember their names, but they're all drabbled in red, and they're always looking for these fate stones. So I would think that they are part of the story as well. But I don't think you have to collect all of them because I don't remember ever having every single one of them. But there are some that in the story you will grab, and I think some of them you actually can miss.
Okay, interesting. Uh, I hear that you can fight the final boss with 10 of them or something, and it's like it's considered to be the hardest saga boss ever, and if not one of the hardest JRPG
You
bosses ever. And that intrigues me because I'm
that
a masochist.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that might make sense too because I've never collected all of them, so that might be why it was easier for me. Like how you were talking about before, that might be why it was easier for me back then.
Yeah, I mean, I would never try like a super version of the final boss on my first attempt. Uh, Romancing Saga 3 has one, and it actually wasn't that bad, but I was also like, I went into it fairly prepared. Saga Scarlet Grace's true final boss, though, man, I have to say, I don't know how to fully address this, but in like just off the cuff, it's one of the hardest JRPG bosses ever made. I think.
Oh boy.
I would say I've played about 70 to 80% of Mega 10, and I would say that it's harder than anything in any Shin Megami Tensei game that I could think of off the top of my head. The only thing is, though, is that like anything else in a JRPG, it's all about how much you've grinded. So,
Yep.
I mean, yeah, the mechanics of the fight are a little tricky, but the mechanics aren't so much difficult as, the barrier for the things that you need to grind for the fight. And
Yeah.
there's like a kind of a cheese strat that you can do, but it's still, you're still playing with RNG a little bit, and it takes a long time to get to that point. So, man, I'm curious about that fight. I'm really curious. And with Saga, it's funny because I think we've hinted at this numerous times throughout this episode, but to use a guide or to not use a guide, to go in prepared, to go in unprepared, I feel like Saga. This is the best way I can describe it. And I'm trying to relate this to the final boss. I'm not just like, I'm not
Yeah.
trying to be too willy nilly about my topics, but the way I see it is, okay. So if you play D&D, you don't want to go into D&D without like a handbook or like a dungeon master's guide, especially if you've never,
Yeah.
you know, DM'd before. And by the way, I know nothing about actual pen and paper RPGs. I'm very much a complete nubile to this, but you don't want to go into that unprepared. And I feel like you kind of have to approach Saga in a similar way, where it could be a lot of fun to go into a game one of the games blind. But I feel like if you start to get frustrated or overwhelmed, that's when you should
Yeah.
step into the guide territory, because it's very easy to fuck up things in these games. And I think part of that's kind of fun. Like the first time I played Romancing Saga 2, I played it on Switch for a little bit before I started playing it on PS4. And I was kind of dinking around. I just went in completely blind. And a bunch of stuff happened. And I was like, oh, well, all my stuff. Ooh, I fucked up. And so then I went back and I read a little bit more of the mechanics, and then I started to appreciate a lot more of the game once I started to understand it. But it's not easy, and that's a level of pretension that isn't for everybody.
Yeah.
So how does Minstrel Song compare to other Saga games in that sense? I know we kind of asked this before, but like,
Yeah.
like what from the bit you played of Romancing Saga 3, how blindly would you recommend a newcomer go into this game?
I would say, at least for Minstrel Song, I think you have to go in there with an understanding that you cannot grind your way to victory. You need to understand that there are going to be some fights that you're actually going to have to avoid, especially when these monsters are chasing you like a bat out of hell. Take a fight or two, learn tech, learn your, spark some text, but don't keep going after that. It's a weird balance. You have to kind of go middle of the road with it. Spark some text, get some items, get some stats. Go do what you have to do though. Don't slouch. And but I will say that you will need a guide if you want to experience everything, because there are some quests that can just fly you by and you will never know that they even existed. And then you go back and you're like, what the hell? Like, this is an option at some point, and there's
Right.
nothing in the game that'll indicate you to go to that location at all to even start that quest. Sometimes it's just something that you might find randomly, like a run in Skyrim or something. It's just something that you just notice, and it's like, oh, that's cool. But now you're like, wow, what else did I miss? You might. My advice would be, at least for some people, if you don't mind starting again from the beginning, just go in blind for your first run and see how it goes. But if you're someone who doesn't want to miss a beat, follow the guide for a little bit. See if you can find some wiggle room where you can break free from that and do your own thing. If you can't, then just because at the end of the day, as much as I didn't like using a guide, I still enjoyed using the guide because I got to experience everything at the end of the day.
Right, and
It's kind
that's
of
how
a
I
give or
feel.
take. And the way I feel like it is kind of like how you watch a foreign movie and you're kind of forced to read subtitles, so you don't
Mm.
really get to see all the action that's happening upstairs because you're kind of reading all the subtitles. It's like a give or take. It's like I love that subtitles exist, so I can watch a lot of these films that I would never would. But at the same time, it's like I've got to constantly shift up and down every single time.
Yeah, and something gets lost in translation, no matter how good the translation or localization of that is.
That too. That too.
But it's that but at the same time, I like this analogy. I'm gonna run with it. At the same time, the more you watch a movie in a language you don't understand, the more bits of a language that you don't understand that you somehow pick up. Right?
Yep,
That's
I'll agree
actually
with that.
that's how I learned Italian. I watched a shit ton of old Italian neorealism movies, and then I took some of that information and applied it to like, oh, I know what this grammatically. I know what this says. I recognize these phrases, and I feel like that is very Saga, like in the same way. Like you're seeing the
Yeah.
stuff on the bottom, and then you're seeing this like the hidden mechanics behind the thing, and then the thing that's being presented. So, hell yeah,
And you
I
could
like.
apply that to other, yeah, and you could apply it to other fire games now, especially now the life point system
Mm-hmm.
and don't grind for certain things. You can apply that to every single other saga game, and you kind of get a similar result where now you start to learn how to get into this series and how to actually start playing it the correct way, and then you start actually getting the benefits from it instead of now always having to rely on a guide. Now, at least if you have one or two games under your belt, you're kind of more prepared for the next one that comes out, and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully, if a new one ever comes
So is in this analogy is using game facts like using Google Translate.
out. No, I would say GameFAQs is pretty spot on for me. It was like
Mm-hmm.
you follow everything to the letter, and I guess it depends too. Because some people don't write their FAQs equally.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I remembered the one that I followed, but they're very precise and they gave me all the mechanics and here's the best skills you'll counter with and things like that. So for me, it wasn't a Google Translate. It was more of
A
bringing your
professional.
Japanese, yeah, bringing your Japanese friend with you to Japan so he could talk for you.
There
Pretty
you
much.
go. There you
It's
go,
like
man.
and in that analogy, it's like I would like to speak to them in their own language and enjoy the site for myself. But you know what? Bring my friend. It's all right too. I got my friend. We're
There you
hanging
go.
out.
And one last point to further that analogy even more. You never really learn a language until you immerse yourself in it completely. I mean, you could
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, you don't want to jump into something like I don't want to like start speaking Arabic with somebody. I know like 5 phrases in Arabic from
Yeah.
the little Assyrian I know. So it's like I don't ever want to try that. I'm not going to learn anything too much that way. But like if I'm in the process of actively learning a language, you have to constantly be speaking it and putting yourself into uncomfortable situations where you have to think on the fly and you're always using it. So that's Saga for you, man. You got to
Yep.
always live with those.
Just like just for you kids at home, just like Oblivion says, go out there, see the people. You got to talk to them. You gotta get lost once in a while. That's how you really learn the thing.
Exactly. You got to get so frustrated that you rage at least once or twice too, because that's part of
Exactly.
it.
Otherwise it's not legit. Come
Right.
on.
Exactly,
Like,
man.
who even are you? Oh, look at me! I did everything correctly, 100%. Oh, no, that's not how it works, guys.
Those tryhards.
Exactly.
There's that infamous Kawazu quote about I'd rather people quit a game because it's too hard rather than quit a game because it's too easy. And I'm
Yep.
paraphrasing that, but that's what it is. I wish the light had come back on right when when I said
Oh,
that.
yes, my
Exactly.
son.
So we're about wrapping up now. We're running a little short on time. So one last thing before we conclude this. What character would you recommend a newcomer start with in this game?
Just Gray, man. Gray, Gray,
Great.
Gray's great. I love Gray's attitude. I like his personality. He's kind of monotone. I feel like you could kind of insert yourself into Gray a little bit, or
Okay.
or Gray sometimes is hashtag mood. You just sometimes you don't feel like dealing with certain people. I would say Gray is a good one to start with. I know another one that I wanted, Jamil the thief from
Mhm.
Estamir. I liked him too. One of those two. Albert also. Albert kind of feels like he's the main character of the whole series, even though technically there is no real main character.
Mhm.
But I would say either Albert, Gray, or Jamil.
Cool. Yeah, I honestly I was definitely looking at Gray for sure, and I've read that suggestion before.
Yeah, play
Um,
Gray, man. Especially
yeah.
with the katana. Once you get the katana beefed up, it's a really good weapon. Pretty
I
sweet.
I love sword main characters because I'm a basic bitch. This is like who I like. I like Julian a lot in Romancing Saga 3. Uh, Leonard, I almost call him Leonard. Leonard in in Scarlet Grace is probably my favorite too. His is the most open. So that definitely. So, dude, I have to say, you've done a really good job of selling me on this game, and
I am surprised because my limited knowledge did that. I am very impressed.
but I have an unveil for you. Are you ready?
Oh god, let's
Are you
see.
ready? You're watching the video, right?
What video? You?
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I'm watching.
okay.
It's sealed up. Don't
Yeah.
open it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna
I
open
don't.
it.
I don't condone piracy or anything.
But I mean, I own
Yeah,
it, right? So I can do
I
that.
mean, yeah, if you ever find nice or wrong, I'm not mad at you. I don't condone piracy. That's what they say. I'm supposed to say, right?
Right. That's so what would happen though? What in this world would happen if I opened up that case and this was in it?
Oh my! You know what? I wouldn't be too mad at it. I wouldn't be too mad because like I said, as much as I hate everything else about that game, just I don't know. I would be very distraught. I would be, but I can't be too mad.
I have to
But
say, I would be bamboozled if a sealed copy was Unlimited Saga.
yeah, be bamboozled, run amok, led astray.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna play it. I will. How about this? I've got a proposition for you. When I finally do play it, we can sit down and we can do an analysis episode. Another one, like a more
Yeah.
elaborate one. If that sounds appealing to you. I don't know when that
Hell
will be
yeah.
though.
Hell yeah, baby.
Awesome,
I'm
man.
good with that. Yeah.
Awesome. And I have an ulterior motive with this whole podcast.
Oh boy, here we go.
I am hoping that after talking about this with me, that you will maybe possibly, time permitting, go back and play another one of these games and maybe make some content about it. Maybe make a little content.
You know what? I will try because I will make the effort just because I came here with no gear whatsoever, but I did end up with what I'm using right now to do this podcast with you, the GPD WinMax. And for a tiny, very powerful PC, this thing's actually pretty freaking dope. So I might actually try and see if I can use OBS and Sony Vegas on this thing to actually make a video.
You could do it. You can do it, man. People be editing stuff on like a cell phone a lot of times.
Yeah,
now.
toasters and everything.
Toasters, pregnancy tests. That's been a reoccurring theme in these podcasts. Somehow a pregnancy test gets brought up every time.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I'm not expecting. We're not expecting, but you never know.
Yeah, don't jinx me now.
Oh shit. Well, you are you are removed right now, so you got nothing else to do, man. You might as well.
Oh boy.
Am I kidding? I don't know. No, I'm not one of those people who tells people to have kids. I already have a big enough Middle Eastern family to tell me to have kids. Yeah. I don't need to spread that to anybody else. And I don't
really. You know? Right. Why not? How dare you?
Right. And you know what? Not a big fan of raising my own, so that's my unveil right there. Not a big fan of having kids. Boom! Made it public.
Oh my god.
So,
impossible.
Right. There's the language. So SaGaHatter, man, thank you so much for coming on here. Anything else you want to speak to real quick before we say our goodbyes and plugs?
Yeah, sure. No problem. And thank you for having me. And I know we didn't get to talk about it, but ladies and gentlemen, please, for the love of God, look up the original soundtrack for Romancing SaGa, Minstrel Song, and Unlimited Saga. If not for anything, you will find some cool fight music or some awesome music to sleep to.
Awesome.
And I don't think I have anything else to
do. Yeah, I guess we didn't talk about music, but that's one of those things I feel like it's hard to sell somebody on until they hear it. You know?
Yeah, exactly. You know, like you guys do the work. I ain't doing the work for you. You do it. You listen to it. And you tell me what it makes you feel.
You've done the work on this game for sure. So, and you guys can check out SaGaHatter's video on Romancing SaGa on YouTube. You are on YouTube. You are on Twitter. And where else? Are anywhere else that we can find you?
No, just those two. I did have a Twitch, but I never did anything with it. So just YouTube and Twitter, and of course, if you ever find me on Discord or anything like that, or Newgrounds, but I haven't uploaded Newgrounds. That's more maybe if somebody wants to do like a collaboration or something. I think Newgrounds is do that. But yeah.
Cool. And as always, you can find us on Twitter at twitter.com/podcastjump. We are on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, YouTube, Twitch, all the fun things. We've got some exciting announcements this week about other stuff coming up. I've got another episode of Sidequests tomorrow and Wednesday coming up, so this is staying strong. This was originally going to be 7 episodes, but now it's more, and that's kind of cool. It's keeping me busy. Hopefully you guys are enjoying it. Again, SaGaHatter, thanks so much, man, for coming on here. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and hope to see you on here again, man.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, my friend.
And good night.